To give us perspective this morning, Martin George, who represents the Tobago Business Chamber, joins me on the Zoom line to break it down and really put in a way we could all understand what Tobago needs at this point in time. And if indeed you believe we are anywhere closer to that 4 billion mark, it seems like a far-fetched kind of, honestly, it seems a bit far-fetched at this point, because when we look at years gone by, even when PNM had their personalities at the helm in terms of Ansel Dennis, when Joel Jack was the Secretary of Finance, when Dennis was Chief Sec, they and all would have made certain requests and they didn't receive what was requested. So I recognize that Tobago in itself, they seem to cap things off somewhere within that $2-point-something billion margin and no more. Could Tobago truly maintain and survive and keep its economic wheel turning based on the allocation provided? I want to start things off in that regard, Martin, and we say welcome.
Yes, hi, good morning to you, Jason, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, Jason, and the interesting thing is that based upon the figures which were provided by the Dispute Resolution Council, you have this range of the percentage of the national budget which they said should be allocated to Tobago. So you have, between a minimum percentage and a maximum figure. And generally, you tend to get the allocation somewhere hovering just above the minimum. So, in other words, they are saying, look, we have met the threshold, the minimum threshold, and you've gotten a little more. But, I mean, it's never, ever really reached the maximum level and definitely has never exceeded it. So I imagine it is going to be, as you say, less than $3 billion. And of course, I think given the national economic circumstances, I don't think it's going to be any different in terms of that type of allocation.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think the government can definitely do, which can definitely help to stimulate the Tobago economy in terms of direct foreign investment, would be to announce the immediate and unconditional repeal of the Foreign Investment Act. I have been calling upon the Minister of Finance repeatedly to address this issue. And Jason, I say this not just from a Tobago perspective. This is actually something that's going to benefit Trinidad and Tobago. Because if you repeal this act and persons are able to make direct foreign exchange investments into Tobago, you are going to have an ease in the forex squeeze. We as a nation, we are bawling, we are crying out every day. Persons who have, medical operations abroad, surgeries, they have to go for medical treatment, medical checkup, overseas. They go to the bank is telling them, no, you can't get any foreign exchange, or come back within a month's time. When you go back in a month's time, they tell you, okay, we'll give you $100. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous as to what is happening now with our foreign exchange, and it makes no sense whatsoever to keep this archaic and anachronistic legislation on the books, which is frustrating, hampering, and stymieing any attempts at direct foreign investment in Tobago, when you look at other Caribbean islands and they are basically rolling out the red carpet for foreign investors. So why would we be so, stupid in this day and age to keep legislation on the books which is preventing foreign investment, but yet still you are crying out for a lack of foreign exchange? I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense. So we are hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that the Minister of Finance will announce that this legislation is going to be repealed, and therefore you will see inflows of direct foreign investment into Tobago, and that by itself will be the greatest stimulus for the Tobago economy. And the spin-off for Trinidad is there, and it's obvious, because if you have persons coming to, say, for instance, invest in villas, guest houses, townhouses, other projects in Tobago by way of direct foreign investment, where are they going to source most of their, lumber, hardware, materials? It's going to be from the Trinidad companies. If they have to put down roads for the asphalt, it's going to come from it. So therefore, you have the benefits that are going to flow to Trinidad from increased direct foreign investment in Tobago. So I think that's the biggest ticket item that I would like to see happen in this budget. And again, we are respectfully calling upon the minister to consider this measure, because it's a simple thing to do. You just repeal that legislation, and therefore basically you have unlocked the door, because that legislation stands as a barrier and as a threshold that persons are not able to cross in order to do direct foreign investment in Tobago.
Yeah, it is indeed a hindrance, and you've, again, with passion, you have had a chance today and in other discussions really to bring it to us in a way we could all understand. I want to ask you now, tourism and infrastructure, more so the infrastructure that, relates to the said tourism. We saw recently some plans to renovate and to uplift Storby, but that in itself came with objection from many of the folks who sell and operate in the space. What's really happening there? Is it that Tobago really wants to get to this modern tourism product model, or do we want to stay with this rootsy, kind of grassroots groundsman style of tourism? What's the real perspective on the ground as it pertains to infrastructure and tourism?
You've hit the nail on the head. And the thing is, you see, this is where leadership and, good governance comes into play. And maybe I think that, the communication and the dialogue with the residents in Tobago is what is needed. Because let me tell you, the Tobago tourism product is yet to be properly defined and ascertained in the regional or international space. And that's the problem, because you have persons who, as you say, they want to retain this, earthy, down-to-earth, rootsy approach to it. But the reality is, tourism internationally has evolved way beyond that. Let's be honest. Let's face the reality. The reality is that if it is that you do not have certain big ticket items to be able to say, well, look, you are going to attract the airlines and the airlift. All right, like for instance, you had the Sandals and the Beaches project, which would have been a branding, to say, well, look, hey, come to Tobago for this. Because let me tell you, you look at the new airport that is going to be opened, sometime in 2025 and commissioned, and of course there'll be a grand ceremony, etc. And that's nice. But Jason, that does not guarantee airlift. What you need is airlift.
But Martin,
so in other words,
but I'll tell you this, Martin.
Basically put the cart before the horse.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this, and I want you to expand on it, because you see, we find I'm always listening to two sides of the debate, and I try to find a balance in my mind, because yes, the big ticket item would be something like a Sandals and a Beaches, where you will see an influx of tourists. But would the tourists ultimately leave that resort and, let's say, give the little artisan in Scarborough a sale with their bags, or give the craftsman a little sale? Because most of those tourists, when they go to that business model, they stay within the walls. They drink, they eat, they have a time within the walls.
Actually, Jason, I could tell you, as part of the initial discussions which were had, the folks at Sandals actually said that they are integrating and they are going to be incorporating as part of their business model the local suppliers. So they started asking hard questions. They said, okay, all right, so if we open these 2 hotels here in Tobago, how many pounds of mutton can you supply a month? How many pounds of lamb? How many pounds of, So they started asking the questions. How many pounds of watermelons can you supply? And I think from what I understand, the responses from the THA at the time were quite embarrassing because the THA could not provide any figures. They couldn't say, well, look, we could guarantee from our farmers or our fishermen or our, those who grow the crops, this amount of, produce per. And that's what Sandals actually asked. They said, we want to incorporate them. We want them to be part of it. So if, for instance, even the taxi drivers would be part of the Sandals pick up and drop off system.
Okay.
So therefore everybody can benefit in a scenario such as that. So we have to actually expand our minds and broaden our horizons. Otherwise, we are going to be having the same conversation 20, 30 years from now and still scratching in the dirt, looking for, scraps rather than being a major player in the tourism market. You can't have it both ways, Jason.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, look, I'm going to make it extremely difficult to get to Tobago, make things difficult for persons when they are here, have high prices, low quality service, and yet still you expect visitors to keep coming back. I had a discussion some time ago when I was in Italy with a tour operator, and when she heard that I was from Tobago, she said, Tobago, yes, I know Tobago. I have many clients who want to go to Tobago. But, Jason, I was so embarrassed when the lady told me. She said, but Martin, you know what my clients tell me most times? They said, Tobago, high price, low quality. And Jason, that was like a dagger to my heart to hear that. And you see, we have to face the reality that there are certain things we need to change, we need to improve. We need to improve our quality of service delivery. Tourism is a service-based industry. And as I've always said, Jason, the art of tourism, and it is an art, right? It's not just, the question of seawater and sand. It has evolved way beyond that. There are many other countries that offer seawater and sand. I have done videos, Jason, and posted on social media, of me on Fort Lauderdale Beach, Hollywood Beach, in Florida, and showing, the nice expanse of sand and seawater and stuff, and saying, listen, hey, don't think that you have a monopoly on anything. The seawater and sand available all over, and in fact, even some of the other Caribbean islands, they could boast and say maybe they have better beaches than Tobago. So, we have to understand that it has gone way past that. It is an experience that you have to sell to visitors. And that experience must be so happy and pleasant and enjoyable that you are able to easily separate that visitor from his money. So in other words, you have so many nice experiences for them to enjoy that they're willing to pay for it and spend their money, and they have a great time, and they will go back, they'll tell all their friends and family, and they'll say, hey, go to Tobago, boy, it is a blast, and they will come back again and do it all over. So we have to understand that if it is that we want to change the dynamic in Tobago. Even, for instance, Jason, as I mentioned, the question of supplying sandals with the agricultural products and the, poultry and those things. We have to look at, in terms of, I'm hoping that the government addresses it in the budget, some question of large-scale agrarian reform in Tobago. And it has to go beyond, you saying, well, telling people, well, put a little kitchen garden in the back of your yard. That is not agriculture in the year 2024. All right. Agriculture in the year 2024 is always government driven or large scale driven. We have in Tobago a large CPEP workforce, and I have suggested that, look, we can transition this CPEP workforce, instead of them being this temporary daily paid status. Let's make them permanent monthly paid workers who are working a full 8 hours a day by incorporating them into structured agricultural farms and programs. So in other words, it's a benefit for them also, because first of all, their salaries will increase because they will now be getting a monthly salary. They will now have permanent jobs. So therefore, if it is they have to access financing in the banks or whatever, and they go with a job letter, they'll be able to say, well, look, yes, I'm permanently employed. This is my monthly salary. salary, I am a CPEP worker. So in other words, you elevate the status of the CPEP worker. You don't, have it as, somebody who is just hustling on a morning for 2 hours, on the side of the road, painting stones and cutting grass. You have it now as somebody who is part of your agricultural development program. And you make it now part of a structured system whereby you are able to say, well, okay, look, we have this farm where we are now harvesting pineapples, a farm where we are harvesting watermelons, a farm where we are harvesting melon, or as we locally know it, baigan. And you treat with it that way. So therefore, when you have a large developer who says, well, look, I'm putting down a resort. I want to know how much you could supply me. You could then say, oh, yes, sure.
There is capacity.
Have a farm which puts out this capacity. We have these fishermen who are now part of an organized, structured system whereby we can tell you, we can produce, we can supply, 10,000 pounds of red fish per month or whatever.
Martin, as we wrap things up in the 15 seconds that remain before we take that break, because I know we will expand for our post-budget analysis sometime this week or next week.
Yes.
But in the couple seconds that remain really fast, ease or squeeze for our budget 24-25? What do you think?
I think it would be a squeeze, but of course it will be masqueraded as an ease.
Interesting response there, Martin. Martin, all the best. And thanks for touching base.
Wow. Have a great morning.
Wow.
Thank you.
Martin says a squeeze that masquerades, that appears as an ease.